Good morning, everyone. No, 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 we can do better than that. Good morning, everyone. Yes, thank you, Brett. Welcome back. Third day, third and sadly final day of Worlds of Flavor. I think that I hope that I can or appropriately say that we have adequately wined and dined you over the past 2 days, but we've still got another third and final home run hitting day for you here. We've got tours with chefs across Latin America, South America, as well as visiting DC, more breakouts and seminars for you. So we've got an action-packed day, and in fact, actually I was about to jump into things, but before I jump into things, I need to remind you that we value your feedback so much. And there's going to be a link sent to you following the conference to fill out the evaluation form. There are also going to be some QR codes posted throughout the building for you to scan that, and that'll bring you to the evaluation form so that you can put in your feedback. Obviously, things are a little strange and different this year, but we want your feedback so that as we look to future conferences, we can see what worked, what didn't work, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of, how we can improve. So please do fill that out, because I guarantee you that every one of your comments is going to be read. So please do that. And next, we are going to Santiago, Chile. We are going to be visiting Carolina Bazán, who is the chef owner of Ambrosia and Bistro Ambrosia. She was also named the world's 50 best female chef in Latin America, and she has such a unique take on cuisine, coming from her travels and her childhood growing up all around the world. We're going to kick things off with a video that Carolina sent us, and then she's going to join us live for a discussion afterwards. So let's roll that video. So joining us from the end of the world now is Carolina. Hi, Carolina.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing. Thank you for joining us. Is this the kitchen that we saw in the video also that you were in?
This is it.
Yes.
Welcome to my home.
Love it. I do love that this technology and sort of going around the world through technology means that we get to see a personal glimpse of everybody. So thank you so much. So one of the first questions I have for you, watching this video, the thing that really struck me was you talk about nixtamalization of tomatoes and other fruits and vegetables. I've obviously heard of, and I'm sure many of us are familiar with that process in terms of corn, but how do you use that for other fruits and vegetables?
Well, usually you use it to change the textures of fruits and vegetables that have a lot of pectin, and you soak it for, depending on the amount of pectin and the vegetable or the result you want to have, you soak it in cal, which is like an ash lime solution with water, and you soak it for between half an hour, 3 hours, or even a day. And it, in this case, it creates a cover on the outside, and then you can cook it, and the inside becomes really, really soft, but it maintains the shape. So afterwards, you can use it in anything you want, and the presentation is very nice. The flavor increases, and well, the nutritional values also, and the smell of it also. And you can use it in soups, and you can have the whole tomato, and it's not going to be soggy. Or different fruits or vegetables. You use it with apples, with pears, with I don't know how do you say, well, zapallos. Well.
So generally things with sort of a thin skin, it sort of sounds like that you would use it. You wouldn't use it on like citrus or something.
And it creates a little thicker skin, but the inside is like a puree. Oh. So it's something very interesting. It's worth trying and finding out about it.
And does the length of time that you put it in the ash lye solution sort of make it softer the longer you leave it in, or does it kind of have the same effect?
It creates, the longer the time, the thicker the cover that it creates. Oh. So if you want it very delicate, you leave it for half an hour, maybe an hour. Because it's really impressive how it really maintains the shape, but it's totally cooked.
That's very interesting. And is that something that has traditionally been part of Chilean cuisine or Chilean sort of techniques, or is that something you brought to the table?
Well, that's something totally new here, because I learned about it in Mexico. It's very like Central American technique used to nixtamalize the corn for the tortillas, which changes the ingredient. If you don't nixtamalize it, you can make the masa, you can make the dough. So it changes the structure. And I found out that you could actually do it for other vegetables and fruits that contain a lot of pectin, and started trying out, and it's been very interesting, the results that we have.
That's
you
awesome.
Can use it for desserts. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'd love for you to talk also a little bit more about this dish that we saw in the video. Is this something that's on your menu at Ambrosia or at Bistro Ambrosia, or is it something you've been playing with?
Yeah, well, this is a dish that I have on the menu for right now, that we're beginning summer, so the tomatoes are just right. And it kind of represents a little bit of where we come from. We have the pebre, which is the classic salsa that we use for barbecues and for a lot of things. We have avocados, which we eat a lot of avocados, mostly every day. And we have a very extensive coast, so of course, I have, it depends on the fish that I get, but there's a fish there. And you have the quinoa, which comes from the north and the Andes. So it kind of talks about where we come from or who we are.
I love that.
That's the idea. I always say that you have to, a chef tells a story, and well, this is a little story.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of stories, tell us the story. You opened Ambrosia in the historic city center of Santiago, in the middle of the city, and then you came back to it and sort of decided to move it outside of that city center. Obviously, the theme of this year's conference is cities of the Americas and sort of exploring that. What was it that really prompted you to change that location and decide that this restaurant was better suited to be outside of the city?
Well, the first Ambrosia was, we opened it in 2003, downtown in the center of Santiago. And in Santiago, the center is, I mean, people go to work, but afterwards, people go to their houses, mostly in the suburbs. So we only opened from Monday to Friday at lunchtime. So for me, that was perfect. For any chef, that would be perfect. Afterwards, in 2010, I went to study abroad. I went to Paris and came back and wanted to put at practice all the techniques and everything that I had learned in Paris. And for that, we would have to make a more fine dining restaurant. And to afford that, we had to open at night. So that made us change location and search for something that was near people to go to at night and on weekends. And afterwards, I opened the Bistro, which is like a little child from the first restaurant, and more urban, more hip, for more young people.
Mm-hmm. And has the pandemic kind of shifted that? Obviously, we've seen during the pandemic a lot of downtowns, as you said, the business that would have come from office workers, office buildings, changing. So it almost seems prescient that you sort of moved to the suburbs and kind of capitalized on that. Has that sort of helped?
Well, actually, just before the pandemic, like 2 years ago in October, there were a lot of riots and they always happen in the center of Santiago, I imagine in the center of any city. Mm-hmm. And the center was totally distracted. I mean, everything was like on flames. And so it's a good thing we weren't there when that happened. And actually, when we decided to move in 2012, there were a lot of riots, also the student riots, and so every Thursday we couldn't open, so that was kind of complicated. Mm-hmm. But things are more stable now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you've traveled all over the world. You grew up kind of all over the world as well. You talked about working in France. How does your sort of culinary philosophy and your approach fit into the larger Chilean culinary scene, or maybe Santiago originally? Are you is what you're doing very representative of other chefs in the city, or is it very different from them?
Well, the restaurant scene is, I would say, kind of new in Chile. I mean, 20 years ago, there weren't many restaurants, or not many good restaurants, and people weren't used to making reservations, and it was like going out of their homes, but they wanted to eat how they wanted. They weren't expecting to go to a restaurant and eat as the chef proposed. They wanted to change every dish and everything. So people have kind of been educated on the last years, and there have been a lot of new restaurants. So the restaurant scene is more exciting now, and mostly there are a lot of chefs coming from abroad. They have been studying abroad or working, and they're coming back with new proposals and new flavors from different parts of the world, from the States, from Europe or Asia. So it's very interesting right now. And it's hard to be like on top of your game because you have to be all the time, what's new in sight all the time.
Well, I think you're doing a great job of doing that so far. So congratulations. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we're looking forward to when we can go to the end of the world to visit you and when we can bring you back up here to join us in person. So thank you so much for joining us, Chef.
We're really hoping to see you soon around here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're going to come a little bit closer north, coming up from the tip of the continent. For our next general session, we're going to be looking at modern Mexican street food, a savory and sweet perspective. And we've got two amazing chefs for this session. Our first chef is Chewy Cervantes, who is the chef de cuisine at Damian and Ditroit in Los Angeles. Chuy worked for he continues to work for Enrique Olvera, but he's been working within the Enrique Olvera restaurants for many years, including opening Cosme in 2014, which went on to win a spot on the world's 50 best restaurants. And now they've got Damian and Ditroit, and he's here to share a bit from those restaurants. So please help me welcome Chuy.
Hey there, good morning. Nice and early. I think I got something that's going to be pretty tasty and kind of brunchy, if you will. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the restaurant just for a few minutes, and then I'll go right into what we're preparing here. So just as was mentioned before, the chef and owner of the restaurant is Enrique Olvera. The restaurant group that we work for, or that the restaurant falls under, is called Casa Mata. Under this restaurant group, we have various restaurants from Mexico City to Oaxaca to obviously New York City, and our most recent venture is out in LA, just south of here. So it's been a lot of fun for us to come out to California, get to know the produce that obviously feeds most of America, be right next to the Pacific Ocean and use a lot of the produce and the fish, working a lot with local fishermen and all that. So it's been a lot of fun coming out here to the West Coast, and obviously coming out to Los Angeles, which is a very, very Mexican-driven community, very Hispanic and Latino-influenced. So for us, it's a wonderful honor to be included in this community, and the last year has been a lot of fun. The restaurant itself is called Damian. As mentioned, it's focused on Mexican cuisine. We pride ourselves on very much focusing on the truest and most, I guess, traditional forms of Mexican cooking and using the produce and ingredients that are closest to us. So the restaurants are all very individual. They all have their own identity. The restaurant in New York City is using lots of produce from the Hudson Valley, whereas here in Southern California, we're using everything from Baja, the Valle and Baja, all the way up to the state of Washington. So, like I said, it's been a lot of fun for us to experience a different part of the world, and we continue to grow. Hopefully, this is just the beginning of this restaurant group. We've been going now for 7 years here in the United States and 20 years overall. So, hopefully, we just continue to grow. The other part of the restaurant that I love to mention, we did a little bit of a demo yesterday with some tacos. Because of the pandemic, we opened in October, but then we're shut down in November when Los Angeles went through a closure. Because of that, we decided to open up taqueria to provide some takeout food, but also to bring our staff back and give them a place to work. So within the same kitchen where we're running Damian, we have some windows that face the back alley where basically around the side of the restaurant, and we created a taqueria out there called Ditroit, which is a much more casual daytime walk up to the window, order tacos, agua frescas, micheladas, very Mexico City vibe to it. So it brings a lot of energy, it brings a lot of fun vibes to the kitchen. Obviously at Damian, we're doing a little bit more focused, a little bit more fine dining, if you will. but within the same space, there's a taquero and tortilleras doing tlayudas and tetelas and all that kind of stuff. So it brings a lot of fun and familial kind of energy to our kitchen. With that being said, stuff like this is important for everyone in the kitchen to know. Mexican cuisine, the foundation of it is the use of corn, most importantly, but also corn, chiles, frijoles, beans, and the various herbs and grains throughout Mexico. So there's a lot to learn in a Mexican kitchen, which I kind of preach a lot to our younger cooks that come in. I think there's a lot of hunger in our industry. From obviously being here at a school is really awesome to see. All the helpers that we have out there have been incredible, and I think Mexican cuisine being kind of a younger cuisine coming into the fine dining world, something like pasta making has been translated to young cooks, and is something that's super interesting to learn, and everybody wants to do it. Same with raw fish in Japanese cuisine, or French sauce making, all that kind of stuff. But the use of masa, I think, is something that holds that kind of importance for Mexicans, but I think is growing in such a way that it's going to become as important as bread making, as important as pasta making, as important as cooking rice, and these types of techniques that are very valuable for all cooks to know. So we're just getting started. So I'm going to go ahead and go right into the recipe here. It's one of our simplest recipes. It is something that we have on the menu at Damian. It is a celebration of corn. So it's a corn tamal, very common throughout all of Mexico and all the way down to Central America as well. You'll often hear it called an uchepo. Uchepo is just kind of the slang word that more commonly used in the state of Michoacan, which claims to be the originating state of this tamal. But very simply, it's a tamal that is mostly the vegetable and less the masa. Whereas tamales that we're more used to eating are probably the opposite kind of ratio, where it's 75% masa, 25%, 30% fat, vegetable that you add to it, filling. In this case, we're going to do 75% vegetable, 25% masa, and a few little seasonings in here. So whenever you make tamales, generally it's a big family event. You're going to do a large batch of them. In this case, I'm going to show you how to make them by hand. Normally, if you're at home making a large batch, you can use your mixer, you can use a giant bowl and really get in there with some large spoons or whatever. But for our purpose here, like I said, we're going to go a little bit smaller here. So the vegetable here is the white corn. As I guess the kind of interesting part about this presentation is we're talking about savory and sweet. So in this case, we're doing a savory presentation, but using a sweet vegetable. So I thought that was kind of cool. So the sweet white corn, which is just now, the season is ending. So this tamal is pretty much going to disappear very soon from the menu, but we'll go with it for today. Sweet corn from Murray Farm in I don't know exactly where they're located, but we get from them at the Santa Monica market in California, in Santa Monica, just west of Los Angeles. So super sweet, nice corn. What you do with it is you blend it in your Vitamix blender, whatever blender you have, food processor, and you really, as you can see it's almost already formed a loose kind of dough on its own because of its own starches and its own liquids, so it's kind of already at a point to where you can see I've done nothing with this but blend it. So it kind of helps it out to the point to where you need very little masa to kind of bind it together. So at this point, we're going to add the 25% amount of masa. The only other ingredients in this tamal are baking powder and whatever oil you like to use. We like to use a neutral oil, so grapeseed oil is what we generally choose. You can also use a flavored oil if you like a little bit more garlic flavor in your tamal. You can go with a garlic oil or maybe an herb flavored oil. That could be very nice as well. And then just a pinch of salt to season. Like I said, you'd normally be doing this in a much larger thing. We use a giant mixer. Traditionally in Mexico, honestly, tamales are made by hand. with very little scaling out. There's a lot of kind of traditional ways of making tamales based on location, pueblo, family. So they're all very different, but this is the way we do it at the restaurant. So basically, what you want to see here is that you want to see that everything has become incorporated. You obviously don't want to see any lumps of masa. The lumps of masa, once you cook them, will become very tough inside of the tamal. And another thing that is a little bit of a misconception when making tamales is a lot of people want to see the batter already in this kind of, when making tamales, there's a lot of people that will take their batter to a very firm texture already before they form them. I think the general idea is because it makes it a lot easier to form the tamales, because it is quite a task. But the secret and the key really is to have a wet batter, a wet dough. You're gonna generally cook these tamales, cool them down, reheat them. For the most part, tamales are not something that you're gonna eat really quickly or fresh, something that you're gonna share, probably use leftovers. In order to have the best version of that when you reheat them is to have a nice and moist batter. So when you reheat them, they stay nice and soft. Otherwise, they become very tough. Okay, so we're gonna shape this tamal now. The only difference between this corn husk that I'm using here and the corn husk that we use to form these tamales is that these are dry, prepared corn husks that you can get at almost any supermarket. These are the corn husks that were actually taken off of the corn. It is important if you do want to impart that almost corn cob flavor, you know, that you get when you use the corn cobs to season your vegetable stocks or something like that. It will impart it, so this will not. So if you use the husk fresh, it is much better. But for our purposes today, I'm going to show you on this one here, but it is the exact same technique. The only thing that you need to do to prepare your corn husks is soak them in some warm water so that they become pliable. Otherwise, they're very hard and they will tear. Okay? So in a restaurant, you're going to want to use a scale so that way you have a consistent portion size for all of your guests. But if you're doing this at home, totally okay to kind of go by the eye. There's various ways to fold these tamales. These ones here are the most simple, where you put the batter in the middle, you kind of push them to the top, and then you fold the bottom of the tamal over. I'm going to show you something that's a little bit more pretty. So in this case, we're going to make something that looks a little bit kind of like a candy that's been pulled. So you fold over the husk, you fold over the other side of the husk. From the bottom side, you start to push up to make the bottom side shape. And now you kind of just tuck it over like this. And then you should have some, with the same husks, you kind of cut some strings. Yes, thank you. You just kind of pull them off, and you can tie them at the bottom. Now, once tied at the bottom, you can work with the top. Again, you want a really nice, tight tamal. So you can push the batter down, and then with another string made from your husk, you tie the other side. So this is what you're going to end up with. This one's kind of coming out a little bit, but that's totally okay. You can just kind of clean it off, and then that's your prepared tamal. What I would do is, with some scissors, just kind of cut off the excess to get rid of any excess corn husk that you're not going to need. Once you have this done, you can, at this point, whatever method you want to cook them, well, it's going to be a steam method, but whatever vessel you have is totally up to you. You can use bamboo steamers. You can use an oven that has a steam option. You can use a double boiler, bain-marie, something like that. And the only thing, so I have some in here that have already been prepared that we're going to serve now. The only thing that you want to do is make sure you line your whatever vessel you're using with corn husks work very well, banana leaves, parchment paper, just line it so that way any excess masa just kind of doesn't make a huge mess. Okay. So the tamal when you first make your tamales, there's one important step after you steam them. You're gonna steam them for 45 minutes. Once they're done at that 45-minute point, they're gonna feel very, very soft. When you feel them in the oven, you're gonna think that they're not ready to go. Almost like a brownie, if you will. It does have that feeling. Think of it like a cake, or like a brownie, like a pastry. You're gonna wanna take it out of the oven and let it rest, no matter what. Whether you're ready to eat them, whether you're saving them for the next day, for later on, take them out of the oven 45 minutes and then let them rest for at least a half hour, another 45 minutes, another hour. And this will allow them to really firm up and take that traditional tamal texture, shape that we're all used to. This is something more of a tip for a restaurant, but if you're very concerned about presentation, tamales will do this thing when they're in the steamer where they'll kind of start to misshape or kind of rub up against each other, and there'll be some pockets of misshapenness. So I'll show you one here that's a little bit, you see this one's almost perfect, really nice and fat. This one here is a little bit skinnier. What you can do is you can always press them down, reshape them, and this is more, like I said, for a restaurant, for presentation. Now you have a really pretty pillow. So they're really manageable at any point. So just to finish this off here, the corn husk leaves themselves are always a very nice vessel for the tamal, because they'll hold whatever salsa, sauce, garnishes that you're serving next to it. They'll kind of have a little place to be held. What we prepare to serve with the tamal and what we serve with it at the restaurant is a corn cream. So from the very same white corn, we take it off of the grain. We use the cobs to make a really nice, so basically you take heavy cream and reduce it by 25% with the cobs in it. Next to that, you're gonna saute all of the corn with a bit of garlic, a bit of onion, add that into your cream, and then puree it all together. So it's very simple. It's literally a cream that has a little bit of sauteed vegetable and pureed, passed through a strainer so it's nice and smooth, and you should get some very, very deep, sweet corn flavor here. Obviously, this is a savory presentation, so you do want to season with a bit of salt. You can do this same presentation in a sweet form. We have done it before. The only thing we've done is obviously seasoned the tamal with sugar and a bit of cinnamon, and then omitted the allium from the corn sauce. So that's the corn tamal there.
Thank you so much, Chef. And now going to the sweet side of things, we have Lilla Bernal, who is assistant professor at the CIA at our San Antonio campus. She teaches baking and pastry there, and she is herself a certified master baker as well as a certified hospitality educator. And before coming to the CIA, she worked throughout Central America, Mexico, and Texas. Please help me welcome Lilla Bernal.
Good morning. How are you today? Made it to day 3. Yeah. All right. Well, I would just say before we get started that this has been an amazing experience for me. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everybody for organizing, to our helpers. It's just been great. So wonderful to see so many people excited about food. So I live in San Antonio, which is about 2.5 hours from the Mexican border in South Texas. I've been there for 18 years. I lived there as a kid, lived there as a young adult, and then of course went off, had adventures and then came home, right? What I love about San Antonio, what I love about being in South Texas in general, is the understanding of the confluence of culture that we have. right? We have so much influence from the Mexican side of the border that comes to the Texas side of the border, and I really feel like it just creates something that is different and, oh, thank you. I'm not sure what this is for.
Oh, for the PowerPoint? No.
Oh, okay. I think it was just gonna play, but it doesn't matter.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm not gonna push any buttons on that, okay. So we have this, confluence of culture, and I think that it really does create something new, something different. I like to think that a large amount of the influence we have on our foods in Texas is, a Mexican influence, but as we like to say, it's puro tejano in execution, right? So we make our own. One of the things that I've seen change dramatically over the past 30 plus years is the snacks and the kinds of things that are available just to everybody, in a snack way. When I open my door, if I walk outside, there are 7 different places in comfortable walking distance from my home where I can get many exciting, dynamic, relentless flavor type snacks. These places are called fruterias or neverias, but they are so much more than just fruit and ice cream. There's just an incredibly wide range of savory and sweet flavors, oftentimes combined. This is something that wasn't the case when I was a younger person, but now definitely is. And one of the things that I think really kind of encompasses this sweet, salty, savory, everything in one is chamoy. Chamoy is a flavor paste that has every flavor you can think of, right? Every flavor we can detect on our tongue. Rick Bayless described, when Rick Bayless described chamoy, he said it may leave you confused. But I don't think it's going to confuse us. I think we're going to be right on. So when you're making chamoy, you may have heard of chamoy. I'm sure you've had chamoy. I'm sure you know about chamoy. But probably you've never made it. When I first started my chamoy journey, I was interested, of course, in what's in it, the history and everything. And there's a little story that I think is super apropos to our conference this last few days, which is that chamoy was invented by a Japanese immigrant who immigrated to Mexico and then was dying to recreate the flavors of his homeland, the umeboshi flavor of the salted, pickled, preserved plum. And so in trying to create that, and then with all the influence of Mexican culture around him, kind of bumped it up, and somehow that turned into chamoy. Now, I don't think that's a substantiated story, but I think it's true, so let's just go with it, right? So first and foremost, in our chamoy, we need some type of fruit. I like to use dried fruit. Some people use salted fruit, some people use preserved fruit. It doesn't really matter, but some type of stone fruit. So we're going to use apricots and dried plums, so prunes, together to create kind of the base, the fruit, the sweet. It's got the sweetness, but it also has the umami and a little bit of bitterness even from the dried plum, from the prune. And then, of course, we have to have chile. So our chiles, I want that to cook up a little bit so maybe you can smell it. Our chiles that we're going to use for this are the mulato, which is kind of the first cousin of the ancho chile. They're both derived from the poblano pepper. And then we're going to use the chile guajillo. Chile guajillo is very, very popular in South Texas. It's in the pork tamal filling that everybody makes at Christmas time. It's also the chile that we use in the barbacoa. So just very common and something that we would see all the time. So we're going to use that one. Both of those are going to give you a lot of depth of flavor. And again, some bitterness, some umami flavors from the drying process. And then a little bit of spice, but not a lot. So our spice element is going to be our Chile De Arbol. So this is the one that's giving you the spice. If you like your chamoy very, very spicy, leave the seeds in. If you don't like it very, very spicy, take the seeds out. That's completely a personal choice. What I love about these different fruterias and neverias that I go to probably more than I should is they all have their own little thing. They all have their own little special something. So some of the chamoys are very, very spicy. Some are less so. Some are obviously purchased, But it's exciting to me to see those differences. And I think what we like about cooking things, what we like about making our own stuff, is we get to do it however we want. So I leave the seeds in. I put about 5 in there and leave them in. I like it spicy. Our next ingredient that is maybe a little unusual, and maybe the one that we don't always think of or don't know about as much, is the flor de Jamaica. So flor de Jamaica is just a dried hibiscus flower, and it is, I'm gonna pour some water over it so you can see how beautiful it turns. It makes like a very like garnet jewel color liquid, and we're gonna use both the liquid and the flour. This is our acidity, and it's also kind of our tanginess. You know how you'll eat something and you kind of feel it like right in here, like it's a little sour, tangy flavor. That's what we're gonna get from there. So we would combine all these things. We're gonna add a little bit of lime juice, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, and puree them, and then we cook it down. And what we end up with is a sauce, right? A salsa that we're going to allow to reduce down a little bit and then taste it, probably add some sugar, probably add some more salt, maybe even add a little more acid. And then we're gonna add some dry spices too. So our dry spice mix is very similar to a product called tajin. But what you'll notice here is our powders are from these chiles for the most part, not 100%, but we have the Guajillo chile powder, we have the Ancho chile powder. I also have some Aleppo because I like that flavor, and so I think, well, let's add that one in too. The ají amarillo is a nice, sweeter chile, but sometimes it's a little bit hard to find, and a good substitute that will change your flavor quite a bit is chipotle. That will add one more element of flavor to your chamoy, so even more, right? Like then even we have the smoky flavor to go as well. So I just want to let this sit. I just want you to see how beautiful the flor de Jamaica ends up being. And the water and the flour both go into the mix there. So we puree up the whole thing. We make our beautiful paste, cook it down to cook it up, right? Make it nice and thick. Sweeten it usually, add a little more sugar. And then we have a ton of chamoy. So then what do? Well, then we should make a mangonada, right? So you know the mangonada, I'm sure. You do not know the mangonada? Okay, well, the mangonada is like a pureed mango drink. It's mango, it's ice, it's usually some lime juice, sugar, of course. All gets pureed together and then is served. Can be either scooped or just poured. It doesn't, either way. And it has chamoy, and so you get the sweetness and the very, cold, kind of creamy deliciousness of the mango to go along with this really dynamic, relentless flavor combination that you have in the chamoy. My mangonada, we're gonna change just a little and add some passion fruit juice that has been reduced with sugar. So it's reduced with sugar just like a simple syrup would be. You just passion fruit juice instead of water, basically, cooked down a little bit. The passion fruit is native in Central and South Texas, and probably here too, it would be my guess. It needs a warm summer. But of course, the one that you can, like the one growing on my fence and at my home, doesn't produce a lot of fruit, right? Like all fruits that aren't cultivated for large-scale production. It's very seedy, so we're just using regular oil passion fruit for this one. But here's what we're gonna do. First, we're gonna get our glass ready. So this is our already mixed chili lime salt is what we're calling it. Oh, and I forgot to tell you about the salt element. So we have our chili powders mixed up together, and then I'm adding something called beer salt, which I really think is highly underused, yeah. It's salt, it's citric acid, but it also has some lime oils in it. So it's just like a more exciting salt, it's lime salt, right? So we'll add that to make it a little more, exciting for us. And that's just a little simple syrup. So I'm gonna get my cup ready. And again, these are served in very, very different ways. Sometimes you'll see them as beverages more, and sometimes you see them really as kind of a frozen dessert. One of the places that is close to my home that I like to go to is called Fruteria Chavarria, and they make these like strips of mango, dried mango that has the chili salt on it, and then it's dried that way, and that's like the garnish. It looks like mango bacon. It's so cool. But so you see all different kinds of things, and there's not one right way, of course. Just like anything that people are making, right? That is maybe not traditional, but experiencing popularity. You know, there's lots of options. So we add some mango. We're gonna add a little ice. You could freeze your mango. That would be another way to do it for sure. Oh, thanks. And then like my passion fruit reduction. Decide about that. No, it seems like about right. It's funny, kind of the opposite of baking, where everything is to the gram, right? Just throw some in, that's good. Yeah. It's a new me. All right, let's see what we got. Perfect. I'm sorry, that was probably so loud. I apologize. All right, we're gonna put a little chamoy down at the bottom. A good amount, right? A good amount. We want to know it's there. And then, of course, you can make this as thick or thin as you want. The other option that you would definitely have, if you wanted to make this in your home, and I make this at home. This is not something that I make at my job. You could easily freeze this mixture. It has enough sugar in it to where it's not going to freeze solid, hard. You know, you would be able to scoop it or kind of scratch it out, you know, like a granite. That would work too. I'm going to just pour it over the back of the spoon in the hopes that I can kind of create a layer there. And you can see it's super creamy without any cream at all. So here we have, you know, we have sweet, we have salty, we have sour, we have bitter, we have the umami, we have the tanginess from the passion fruit, and then of course, were we to add the chipotle powder, we'd also have a smoky element. So it's really, it's just everything, right? It's so many flavors combined into one. And I feel like that is, in some ways, you know, it's a huge influence of Mexican cuisine, just generally speaking, but I also feel like it's kind of something that, at least in South Texas, is becoming more and more common to see, and then also really kind of shaping the way that people are thinking about flavor in general, and the just almost overwhelming, right, relentless kind of flavor is the way that things are going, and the way than what people want. So I think it's very exciting. I like it a lot. Mostly I like eating and drinking the items that I am lucky enough to have around me. I'll put just a little lime zest on it, just, you know, so it feels fancy, right? Yeah. And maybe a little pinch of our chili lime mix. And then that's it. So that's a mangonada apasionada. And I hope you join us at the Marketplace lunch and you can give one a try. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chef. I feel like I don't personally consume alcoholic beverages, but I feel like there is a great potential in there to get some extra alcohol in there as well. So now we are headed to our final round of breakout sessions.